on trying to make their way around France may find themselves in difficulty this Wednesday, with nationwide protests being called, branded Bloquons tout or Let's Block Everything. The transport sector will be particularly impacted. At the centre of the upset is the austerity plan of François Bayrou, whose government fell following a confidence vote on Monday. Solange Morjan tells us more now about what's expected to happen.
French authorities are calling it a horizontal movement, or one without a leader. And officials say that means September 10th's Bloquons tout, or Let's Block Everything call, is all the harder to anticipate. France's Interior Minister says they're deploying 80,000 police officers and gendarmes and won't tolerate any violence or illegal blockades. With online rallying cries to impede access to roads, refineries, train stations, as well as other symbolic places across the nation, and actions like abstaining from using bank cards, the protests are expected to be far from a classic day of strikes. Peaceful protests are being planned, and some labor unions have been holding general assemblies for organized action. But most unions have decided to wait for a joint protest on September 18th. But for many who support the Let's Block Everything call, they say political leaders need to start listening now.
It's exaggerating to say we'll break everything, but we will block things so that the political system reacts. Some salaries are 10 times higher than the little workers earning 1,500 euros a month.
Enough is enough. We have to share for there to be a public service, for social justice, for the climate, with people who are going hungry. I think this is the moment, and I feel like something different is happening.
While so-called surprise acts are expected, many sectors have been planning and preparing. The French aviation body said it's asked airlines to cut down by 50% flights leaving from Nice and the Corsican airports. As for rail travel, the SNCF warned passengers to expect disruptions, particularly on intercity lines. And in the Paris region, the RATP said subway and bus lines are expected to run normally.
Well, for more details, I'm pleased to be joined now by the sociologist Etienne Ollion. Thank you very much for being with us. Can you tell us, first of all, where did this movement arise from?
Sure, thank you very much for having me. So this is a movement that basically was initiated just before the summer. It started on social media, I believe on TikTok, where someone posted a video, and this video got, liked and promoted, and a bunch of people said, we need to oppose, mostly the government. There was something about prices, and that sort of gained steam a little bit over summer. Some people started to organize, and as this was happening, some modes of actions were being promoted. Some people said we should ban, the use of cash, for a few days in order to have a system collapse. Some people said we should block roundabouts, means of transportation, etc. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge of, repertoires of, action that are being offered here. This is a movement that is still, in the process of being defined. And so it's pretty hard to know. What we know also, that's a movement that has no clear political identity, but maybe we'll talk about that.
So if it's starting on social media, is the threat that there's some foreign influence in this movement also?
I don't think so. I think at the very beginning, the way there's always that fear, but I think at the very beginning, it started off from accounts that rather hail from nationalistic right, Les Essentiels, for instance, and that as the movement gained steam, it got, co-opted, scooped, I don't know how to put that, by political parties and union more to the left, to the point that at the moment, some social scientists estimate that it's more of a movement that's going to be gathering people from the left than anything else.
Why is it persisting even after the Bayrou government fell and his austerity measures, therefore, are not going to be going forward? Why are they still continuing to protest?
Well, first of all, Bayrou fell just 2 days ago, and the movement, has been announced for weeks now. So people have been organizing around that. Second, it's true that normally, when you lose the main scapegoat, a movement tends to diminish a little bit. But that's not exactly what's happening at the moment. First, because Emmanuel Macron very speedily nominated a prime minister. Sébastien Lecornu, but also because the budget, which was the bone of contention, the budget is still in the pipeline, and this is this very budget that is going to be discussed in the next few weeks in the National Assembly. So for that reasons, I guess the grapes of the wrath are still very much present.
Now, you mentioned there the newly named Prime Minister, Etienne Ollion, a conservative, and that was quite surprising to many because there was the thought that perhaps Macron might pick someone more from the left to appease this movement. But what does Lecornu's appointment tell you?
Yeah, there's several things that are surprising in this. There's the timing, for instance. Why would Macron go so fast to nominate a prime minister, while in fact he could have used the sort of like disappearance of a previous one as a fuse, to sort of dissipate the tension. I mean, at least he could have hoped for that. So that I find a bit striking. What I also find striking is that the prime minister he just nominated, as you said, hails from the Conservative Party in France. And in terms of arithmetics, it just doesn't add up, No matter how skilled the new prime minister is, and I don't know anything about that, I would be very surprised that he managed to do, better than what the previous prime minister, who was actually supposed to be a man from the center, a man of consensus, didn't manage to do so. It may very well be the case that the same causes will have the same consequences and that we're going to be in the same place, in the next few months.
Now, a reminder to those who may not be following French politics so closely, this is all a symptom of that political gamble that he took about 2 years ago now, I think.
It was last year, yeah.
Last year. And he called a snap election to try to rout the extreme right, who'd done very well in the European Union elections. And has that now left the National Assembly effectively ungovernable?
Well, I mean, that's what he says, and to a certain extent, there's a bit of truth to the fact that it's a bit harder. France has a long tradition of having a parliamentary system where the majority gets, a lot of power, and if it doesn't get enough power, there's a lot of tools that can be used, in order to sort of domesticate, basically, the parliamentarian. So in that sense, France is not a classic parliamentarian system. And that, became a bit harder, in 2022, when Macron was re-elected, there was a parliamentary election, and he didn't have an absolute majority, a complete majority, so he was forced to use some of his tools which are unpopular, and he was also, forced sometimes to make consensus. And so he called that snap election in order to gain again a majority, but he failed, and he got, even way less. And now France is in a situation where there's basically 3 blocks, in parliament. And our institutions may be designed to handle that pretty well, but the political culture at the moment is not ready to accommodate that. And so that's why we've been bouncing between different prime ministers, in fact, 4, in just 4 years.
Now, looking at French politics, what's his position like? Is he going to be forced into a position where he's going to have to call an early presidential election? He's insisted himself that he's going to serve out his entire term, but will it be, if there's too much turmoil, will it be left up to him?
Yeah, I mean, there's several options. One option is that he calls again a snap election because he has the power to do that again. There's always 1 year of lag in between snap elections from the president's side. So that's one option. He could do that. But it's quite unlikely that his side is going to gain, anything. To the contrary, they are actually, pretty low in the polls. So I'd be surprised that this happened. Another thing that he could do is actually leave office, and we would, that would call for, earlier presidential election. That doesn't seem to be in the cards. So that doesn't leave him, in terms of classic political coordinates, a lot of leeway. What he could try to do is, in fact, to try to modify the rules of the game and changing, some constitutional parameters. So moving from, a first past the post system to a proportional system, introducing a bit more of deliberative democracy, referenda, votations, etc., which is what, in fact, the people in the streets are asking for. There's a clamor for having more of a say, to the political lives and futures. And so that could actually be, but that also doesn't seem to be part of Emmanuel Macron's, political agenda.
And looking at the movement itself, it's going to start this bloc en two from tomorrow, and then a week later, the airline towers striking as well. There's going to be huge disruptions. What are they hoping to achieve? And is this a lot different from the gilets jaunes that we saw in previous years?
It's pretty hard to say at the moment. I think there's a serious number of people tomorrow who are going to go out and protest, hoping to garner enough support so that people, join them and that they create a sort of snowball effect. Unions are on the line for that. Some of them, called for a mobilization day tomorrow, but most of them did not. They also called together for another one in a week from now. So I guess everything is very much up in the air tomorrow. I'd be surprised, that the same pattern than with what happened with the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest happens, because first, tomorrow is a Wednesday, and it may sound very trivial, but you don't get the same population, the same demographic, whether you demonstrate on a Wednesday and on a Saturday, and the Gilets jaunes were on a Saturday. Also, I guess, the police forces are much more ready this time, and so I would not be surprised that there is a sort of strong suppression of anything tomorrow on the side of the police.
Thank you very much to the sociologist Etienne Ollion for that analysis on this movement. Huge disruptions expected here in France from tomorrow, particularly affecting the local and national rail networks to begin with.